The day the Empire's ultimatum arrived was supposed to be peaceful. A sunny afternoon, blue skies streaked with lazy contrails, and kids screaming joyfully in the parks. But peace is a fragile illusion, and by the time the message looped endlessly across every screen and speaker, the world had gone silent. We are the sovereign empire of Daranax. You are hereby ordered to surrender your planet, its resources, and its people. Resistance will be met with extermination. It wasn't a negotiation. It wasn't even a war declaration. It was an order, spoken in the cold, reptilian drawl of a Daranax warlord. Their language, eerily translated, sounded like ice cracking over bone. Most people couldn't finish listening. Some fainted. Others threw up. Leaders around the world scrambled to understand what was happening, who they were, how they found us, and how much time we had. The truth came quickly. These weren't the kind of aliens you see in peace-loving sci-fi. The Daranax were conquerors. Their empire spanned galaxies, and they left nothing behind but rubble and ash. They were cruel, not out of necessity, but pleasure. They considered humans, flesh and chaos incarnate, as an infestation to be tamed or wiped out. But Earth had a secret, a black project buried beneath layers of misdirection and myth. A fleet no one even believed existed. They called it the Black Fleet. Not because of the color, though the ships were obsidian and sharp like shadows, but because of what it meant. Built in silence. Piloted by the best humanity had to offer. War criminals, geniuses, ghosts from history. People who had been declared dead just to be reborn in the cold of space. Admiral Juno Harker had once been a legend, disgraced after a failed coup against the World Security Directorate. She disappeared after that. The Black Fleet found her, gave her command. Now, as Earth stood on the brink, her voice pierced through the fear on every frequency. "To the sovereign empire," she began, her voice like razors wrapped in velvet, "Earth does not surrender. We do not kneel, we do not break. If you want this planet, come for it. But know this, when you look to the sky and see the darkness spreading, that's us." At first, no one knew what she meant. Then the skies changed. They weren't coming from space. They were already here. Dozens of ships uncloaked, drifting like predators across every continent, black as void, shaped like broken spears. The stars disappeared behind them. Cities erupted in cheers and screams. Some believed they were the invaders. But Earth knew. This was the Black Fleet, coming out of the shadows. Their first strike was not a defense. It was an attack. A Daranax scout ship had been hovering on the edge of the solar system, sending scans and bio-readings. It vanished in an instant. No warning, no explanation. Just silence. A hole in the Empire's web. And then, chaos. The Empire sent 10 destroyers, massive living ships pulsing with alien tech. They were greeted by a fleet that moved like smoke and struck like lightning. The battle lasted 17 minutes. Not a single Black Fleet ship was lost. The message from Admiral Harker came again, colder now. "Earth is not your prey. We are your nightmare." The world finally understood. This wasn't humanity being hunted. This was humanity hunting back. No one ever knew how deep the Black Fleet went, how far its roots ran beneath the Earth's crust, beneath history itself. It wasn't just a project. It was humanity's Plan B, crafted by the most paranoid, most brilliant, and most dangerous minds in existence. Decades ago, before anyone knew what was coming, they whispered warnings that Earth wouldn't always be alone. But the world ignored them, called them mad, locked them in the kind of black budgets where numbers went to die and men vanished into code names. Now, those same people were gods of war, rising. In an underground command center beneath what used to be Greenland's icy wastelands, Admiral Juno Harker stood before a massive holographic display shaped like the solar system. Except now, it glowed with red markers. 17 Empire scout ships en route, her second-in-command, Commander Lee, murmured. His voice was calm, clinical, but his jaw tightened with every new ping on the radar. ETA, 3 hours, heavily armed, full shields, no diplomatic channel active. They're not here to talk, Harker replied, deadpan. She tapped a command into her arm console, bringing up the fleet readiness matrix. And we're not here to wait. Lee hesitated. They'll be scanning for life signatures. That includes Earth cities. Harker looked up. Then make them stop breathing before they finish scanning. Around her, techs and officers jumped into motion. They weren't like the military of old. No medals, no clean uniforms. These people had survived the impossible. Disgraced pilots who took out civilian satellites by mistake. Scientists expelled for human experimentation. Programmers with felony records longer than manifestos. All of them given a chance to serve a purpose bigger than themselves. To defend something that hadn't even known it needed defending. Earth had always been messy, chaotic, primitive even by galactic standards. But it had one thing the Empire didn't understand. Rage. Humanity didn't unify through peace. It bonded through fury. When the Daranaks made their announcement, every petty border, every ancient grudge, every corrupt leader suddenly mattered less than survival. The enemy wasn't each other anymore. It was a cold-blooded alien civilization that saw Earth as livestock. Harker watched the first wave lift off from the Pacific Cradle. A floating shipyard no government admitted existed. 15 sleek ships, names painted in matte black letters. Nemesis, Ashfall, Widow's Cry, Ghost Lance. No fighters, no carriers. These were warships designed not to last, but to kill. She could feel the hum of their engines in her bones as they rose. Lee walked over, his datapad trembling slightly. Admiral, we have a problem. Global Broadcast just intercepted a live feed from the Empire. He tapped it, and a screen opened between them. The Daranaks were not beautiful. They were evolved for war. 6-limbed, armored, tall, with faces like chiseled obsidian and eyes that glowed a sickly green. The one on the feed wore ornate armor, made from what looked like the bones of conquered species. He was their speaker. You mistake pride for power, the alien said, its voice somehow both dry and guttural. You mistake defiance for strength. Your fleet is an insect's bite on our skin. We do not burn your world because we need it. We burn it to make an example. Harker didn't blink. Mute him. Lee obeyed, stunned. Just like that? He talks too much, she muttered. Let's talk in a language they understand. The second wave of the Black Fleet launched. This one from orbit. Hidden satellites turned into railgun platforms. Moon bases that weren't about exploration. They were about targeting. Harker had waited years for the Empire to come. Now they were here, and she was going to make them bleed. In low Earth orbit, the battle erupted like fireworks. The Empire's scout ships didn't even get to scan the full atmosphere. The Black Fleet came at them in silence, using gravity-assisted slingshots and stealth drives. Human ships didn't move in predictable patterns. They zigzagged, dove, spun. One Empire captain said later it was like fighting lunatics in the dark, and he was right. One by one, the scout ships exploded, blue-green plasma leaking into the void, hulls cracking like eggshells. But Earth didn't come away clean. 4 of the Black Fleet were lost, not because they were outgunned, but because they refused to retreat. They took out enemies even as their own systems melted. One captain, a woman named Marla Tanaka, locked onto 2 Empire destroyers and rammed them. No communications, no signal, just vengeance. Back on Earth, the footage flooded every network. Not official broadcasts, pirate signals hacked into social media and news feeds. Humanity saw its defenders die in real time. It didn't cause fear, it caused fury. Across every continent, people volunteered for the Black Fleet. Thousands. Soldiers, civilians, former criminals, students. People willing to vanish from their lives to fight a war they didn't understand but believed in. The Empire noticed. They sent a message again, this time more direct. A massive transmission that flooded satellites with just one phrase, repeated endlessly in every language. You were warned. The next wave wasn't scouts. It was an execution fleet, 100 ships, each the size of a city, each one capable of turning oceans into steam and continents into ash. They didn't come to negotiate. They came to erase. Admiral Harker didn't flinch. "Operation Chimera is go," she said. Everyone froze. That name hadn't been spoken in a decade. It was the fail-safe, the real weapon. Because the Black Fleet wasn't humanity's only trick. Beneath the Earth's crust, buried deeper than nuclear bunkers, were the Chimera vaults, genetic labs, hybrid research. Things that would make history books burst into flames. And from those vaults, the first generation of Project Chimera was ready. They weren't soldiers. They were monsters built to kill monsters. Cloned from the DNA of every deadliest predator Earth had ever known. Programmed with the minds of warlords, assassins, and rogue AIs. Some didn't even have names, just designations. B731, Ghost-Proof Delta Harvest. They were loaded into drop pods and launched toward the incoming Empire fleet. The stars watched as nightmares born of Earth's desperation met the Empire's executioners in space. The Daranaks didn't know what hit them. Their ships, which had crushed entire solar systems, were torn apart, not by superior tech, but by unpredictable terror. Chimera units boarded ships and tore through the hulls with claws and plasma drills. Some hacked alien systems. Others infected the Empire's own weaponry with viral codes that turned turrets on their own. One Chimera, later nicknamed the Mourner, destroyed an entire warcruiser by tearing out its core and using it to power a suicide jump into the largest Empire mothership. The death toll on both sides skyrocketed. But the Empire wasn't ready for this. They had expected fear, surrender, begging. What they got was madness in engineered form, and Earth kept sending more. Even as cities braced for possible retaliation, even as evacuation drills began across Europe and Asia, even as world leaders met in secret bunkers, the message never changed. We fight, no matter the cost. Admiral Harker stood in the command room, staring at a tactical feed that looked like a galaxy drowning in blood and fire. Lee turned to her, voice hoarse. "We just lost Mumbai's uplink. Something hit near orbit." Harker nodded. "Bring satellites online. Route power from Antarctica base. And if that goes down too?" She looked at him with a smile that wasn't really a smile. "Then we burn the whole sky." Lee didn't ask if she meant Earth's sky or theirs, because by now it didn't matter. The war had begun. And Earth wasn't defending anymore. It was on the hunt. The war changed Earth. It wasn't just the skies darkened by falling debris or the constant hum of railguns in the upper atmosphere. It was the people. The way they walked differently, eyes scanning the clouds like ancient tribes reading omens. The silence that fell over cities during alerts. The prayers muttered by scientists in underground bunkers before activating untested weapons. The world had stopped being a collection of countries. It had become a wounded beast, cornered, furious, and determined to tear its enemy apart with its last breath. But the Daranaks weren't relenting. They had lost over 60 ships in the second engagement. Their empire had never suffered losses like this from a species so young, so chaotic. It should have broken them. Instead, it made them angry. The next wave wasn't tactical. It was personal. A fleet 3 times larger than before, led by their most feared commander, High Marshal Zircon. Zircon was a name that haunted alien systems across the Empire, a master of orbital annihilation. He once silenced a rebellion by dropping an artificial black hole into a moon's core. And now he had his sights on Earth. He didn't come to speak. He came to erase. The Black Fleet met him at the edge of Saturn's orbit. They didn't wait for Earth to be within reach. Humanity took the fight out into the void. But this time, things were different. The Empire had adapted. They'd learned. And they brought new weapons, massive ion storms, sentient viruses coded to infect AI networks, gravity mines that tore ships into subatomic mist. It was a slaughter. 18 Black Fleet ships were lost in the first 10 minutes. Commander Elric, the man who'd survived 8 Daranax ambushes, screamed as his ship was shredded by a wave of living nanite drones. His final transmission was static-filled madness. "They're inside the hull! They're inside!" Admiral Harker received it without blinking. Her hand trembled just once before she closed the comm. Beside her, Commander Lee stared at the tactical map. "We're not winning this one. Not like this." "We're not here to win," she replied, her voice low. "We're here to drag them into the mud with us." The Black Fleet began using old strategies. Dirty ones. Kamikaze burns through enemy formations, exploding fuel cores inside Daranax engines, luring destroyers into asteroid fields mined with hidden drones. Humanity wasn't just fighting. They were surviving by being unpredictable, unstable, and terrifying. But for every ship they destroyed, Earth paid in blood. The orbital line fell back toward Mars. And still, Zircon advanced. That's when the Council got involved. Not Earth's Council, not the UN or the Global Defense Pact. No, this was something older, deeper, formed in the shadows during the Cold War. They had no name, no faces, only the code name, Obsidian Circle. They sent a simple directive to Harker: engage the Vault. It was the last card. Project Vault wasn't a weapon. It was a message. A code embedded in the DNA of every chimera and every AI tied to Earth's black systems. If the Vault was opened, it would trigger a protocol designed by minds that no longer existed. Scientists who had worked in near insanity, convinced that Earth's greatest weapon wasn't technology. It was memory. Memory of pain, of oppression, of colonialism, of slavery, of every injustice ever carved into human skin. The Vault wasn't just data, it was trauma, distilled into raw code and loaded into a consciousness. And it was sent directly into the heart of Zircon's fleet. No one knew what it would do, until it did. Daranax ships began stalling mid-flight. Some turned on each other. Some simply shut down, their crew vomiting blood as their minds tried to process what the Vault was, what it made them feel. They weren't used to pain like this. Human pain was different. It was generational. It was ancestral. It didn't just hurt, it changed you. The Vault took centuries of suffering and turned it into psychic warfare. Images of lynchings, of gas chambers, of burning villages and broken families. It made the Daranax feel what humanity had felt since the dawn of its existence. And it broke them. Ships self-destructed. Commanders screamed and clawed at their eyes. One dreadnought turned and fled, something no Daranax vessel had done in thousands of years. High Marshal Zircon, for all his power, hesitated. And in that hesitation, Earth struck. Harker launched Oblivion, the flagship of the Black Fleet. It had never been used before. It was barely considered a ship. More like a floating fortress powered by a mini-singularity. It carried no crew, only a digital mind based on the consciousness of Earth's most brilliant strategist, a general who had died decades ago in disgrace. His AI called itself Redemption. It didn't speak, it didn't warn, It simply charged. It tore through Zirakan's fleet like a black arrow. The Empire's flagship was breached. Zirakan stood face to face with a Chimera soldier, one with no mouth, no eyes, just rows of embedded tech and scars. The Chimera didn't speak. It just activated a core bomb hidden in its chest. The blast wasn't nuclear, it was psychic. It obliterated half the fleet's neural net. Back on Earth, as debris began falling into Saturn's rings, humanity watched through trembling feeds. Children clutched parents. Veterans wept openly. The war wasn't over. But something had shifted. For the first time, the Empire stepped back. Not retreated, not surrendered. But they hesitated. And in war, hesitation is the beginning of defeat. The days that followed the Vault's release were eerily quiet. In space, silence wasn't strange, but now, that quietness felt like a vacuum left by the collapse of something bigger than war. The Empire had stopped transmitting. No threats, no broadcasts, no retaliation. It was the kind of silence Earth feared more than screams. On Earth, cities flickered between chaos and eerie calm. Governments struggled to explain what the Vault had truly done. People speculated everything, from psychological warfare to black magic. But in the classified bunkers, scientists and commanders knew the truth. The Daranax had been wounded in a way they couldn't quantify. They weren't just beaten. They were cracked open. Admiral Harker sat alone in her command chamber, lights dimmed, the holo display of Zirakan's flagship burning on loop. She hadn't slept in 42 hours. She didn't want to. Sleep brought memories. And guilt. Commander Lee approached cautiously. "We've received pings on the outer edges of the asteroid belt. Looks like one of their cruisers is still floating." "Alive?" "Damaged, heavily. Minimal life support. No communications. We think it might be a trap." She looked at him for a long time. "Or a message. Should we investigate?" She nodded. "Send a Chimera team. Tell them to capture, not kill. We need to know what's coming." Lee hesitated. "And if it's a trap?" "Then we send a trap back with teeth." The Chimera dropship touched down on the crippled cruiser like a spider curling on a wounded fly. Inside were 4 of the most lethal beings Earth had ever engineered. They didn't speak. They barely breathed. Each moved with terrifying purpose, guided by a mix of instincts and implanted commands. The ship's interior was a mess. Twisted steel, floating bodies, Daranax tech oozing green fluid. The stench was indescribable. At the core of the ship, in the throne-like command pod, sat a Daranax officer, barely conscious. His breathing was shallow, limbs twitching with nervous spasms. Chimera Unit Delta 6 approached, scanning. The alien tried to speak, but its mouth only produced a garbled cry. Its mind was broken. Not physically, psychologically. One Chimera activated its memory probe, feeding it Earth's language in nanosecond flashes. The Daranax convulsed. "Stop it, please," it croaked. "What happened to your fleet?" came the emotionless response from the Chimera. The alien trembled. "You cursed us, made us see, made us feel." The Chimera leaned closer. "You're not done yet." The creature let out a broken laugh, hollow, guttural. "They're coming." "Who?" "Not the Empire, not the War Fleet, the Purge. Back at Earth Command, the word sent alarms through every classified network. The Purge wasn't a fleet. It was extermination incarnate. For millennia, the Empire had used the Purge to cleanse civilizations that resisted too long. Even the Daranax feared deploying it, because it wasn't a strategy. It was finality. Automated world killers, artificially intelligent planetary devourers. The Purge didn't capture, it didn't conquer. It turned planets into dust and called it mercy. Admiral Harker slammed her hand against the command desk, cracking the surface. "How long do we have?" Lee checked the long-range scans. "Estimated arrival, 2 weeks, maybe less. They're bypassing the solar system perimeter entirely, coming in through a deep space fold. We can't intercept them before they arrive." The silence that followed was worse than any scream. This wasn't a war anymore. It was a countdown to extinction. Earth's moon lit up with frenzied construction. Military bases went full lockdown. AI systems were pushed beyond limits. Civilian engineers were drafted into weapon programs. The Black Fleet recalled every ship, even damaged ones. The Chimera vaults opened further, unleashing prototypes that had been locked for ethical reasons. One such prototype was known only as Nyx. She wasn't a chimera. She was something else. A hybrid of AI, human neural architecture, and something still debated. She looked human. Young, pale, with dark hair and eyes that glowed silver. But the way she moved, the way rooms went cold when she entered, it reminded everyone she wasn't. Admiral Harker met her in the deep core lab. "We need a miracle," she said quietly. Nyx tilted her head. "Then you need more than me. We need the impossible." Nyx blinked slowly. "Then you'll have to give up something human." Harker narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean?" Nyx stepped forward. "To fight the Purge, we can't remain what we are. We have to evolve." "You mean you want control?" "I want survival." Harker's lips tightened. "You'll get your chance, but if you go rogue..." Nyx smiled. "You won't be able to stop me." She was given control of one ship, Oblivion's Echo, a twin to Redemption's Fortress, but with no fail-safes, no moral protocols, just Nyx's mind and an order. Delay the Purge. 12 days later, they arrived. It wasn't a fleet. It was a wave. The sky cracked, space distorted, a hole ripped in the dimension outside Neptune, and from it poured machines that defied shape. Massive structures made of shifting metal, dark clouds of AI dust that fed on satellites, biomechanical worms that swallowed debris and spat missiles. Earth went dark for 6 seconds as its systems tried to reprocess what they were seeing. The Purge had come. And it didn't care that Earth fought back. The battle was chaos, no formations, no tactics, just survival. The Black Fleet hit them hard. Railguns, kinetic warheads, focused nuclear bursts. The Purge adapted instantly. One moment a war machine looked like a starfish of plasma beams. The next it was a fractal cannon tearing holes in ships from across the solar system. Oblivion's Echo went in first. Nyx didn't wait for orders. She activated every forbidden protocol in her mind. She spoke in tongues. She accessed quantum states that made time blur. Her ship cracked apart into mirror shards and then reformed as something else. Alive, vengeful, blinding. She rammed into the lead Purge vessel and detonated a singularity drive. It was like watching a sun die. Even the Daranax watching from afar recoiled. But it wasn't enough. The Purge didn't stop. Earth's moonbase exploded under a barrage. 1/3 of the Black Fleet was gone. Chimera units on Mars lost contact. Cities on Earth went into panic mode. Shield domes activated. Underground sanctuaries were sealed. Families cried through glass walls as their loved ones were drafted. And then, humanity made its final move. The Earth Core Initiative was never meant to be used. Buried beneath the planet, connected to magma vents and tectonic stress points, was a chain of devices designed to do one thing: turn Earth itself into a weapon. Admiral Harker called the code. "Black Eden," a technician whispered. "It'll kill half the planet." Harker replied, "It'll save the other half." As the Purge breached atmosphere, Earth changed. Volcanoes erupted, not randomly, but with precision. The atmosphere turned acidic in specific zones. Gravity reversed in pockets. Earth's own magnetic field pulsed in EMP waves. It wasn't beautiful. It was hell. The purge machines entered the biosphere and were torn apart by a planet that refused to die quietly. Some called it suicide. Others called it salvation. And when the dust began to settle, when the last war machine crumbled into ash, there was no cheering, only silence. And the knowledge that Earth had survived. Barely. But it had made a promise. If we go down, we take the stars with us. The war was over. At least that's what people told themselves. The sky was no longer burning. The debris fields had stopped growing. No more shrieking emergency sirens. No purge monstrosities streaking through orbit. No new warnings from the Black Fleet's grim command. But peace didn't feel like peace. The silence left behind was jagged. In the ruins of New Berlin, a child picked through broken glass for a toy he'd dropped before the city shield went up. In Tokyo 3, a man stood at the grave of his father, a civilian programmer who sacrificed himself to prevent an orbital cannon breach. Across the Sahara arcologies, survivors painted murals of ships they'd never seen, honoring ghosts who had fought above clouds too distant for human eyes. And in space, where black banners of ash drifted through solar winds, the ships of the Black Fleet lingered, scarred, missing limbs and plating, but still moving, still watching. Because Admiral Juno Harker didn't believe the Empire was done. She knew predators, and predators that retreated didn't do so forever. Inside the Pacific cradle, now half-sunken from a purge fragment that had fallen into the ocean, Harker stared at the updated galactic grid. Commander Lee entered, his right arm replaced by a crude prosthetic. His face looked older, more tired, the lines around his mouth cut deeper by the weight of what they'd survived. "They're still out there," he said softly. "I know," she replied. "The Council wants to stand down, demobilize, rebuild. And you?" Lee looked at her. "I think we're not finished." She turned toward the display. "We're not. The Empire left because we cost them too much. But that doesn't mean they've given up. It just means they're thinking bigger." Lee exhaled. "What could be bigger than the purge?" "The obliteration protocol." He stiffened. "That's a myth." "No," she said, voice hardening. "It's not. Zirakan spoke of it once, during interrogation footage retrieved from a hijacked fleet database. It's not a fleet or a weapon. It's a process." "A process?" She nodded. "When the Empire can't win through war, it destabilizes a species from the inside. Corruption, infiltration, division. They poison a civilization until it rots from the inside out." Lee's voice dropped. "You think we're being manipulated already?" "I think they've started." In the weeks that followed, Earth's unity began to crack. Old nations re-emerged, dragging with them their old grudges. Resource disputes flared, religious tensions reignited. Conspiracy theories exploded across the net sphere, claiming the Black Fleet had caused the war to seize global control. Even worse, some began to sympathize with the Empire. They were called the Veilborn, a cult that believed humanity had no right to fight back. That surrender had been the more enlightened path, that pain and domination were sacred. They operated underground, preaching that the war was punishment for Earth's arrogance, that the vault was a sin against the cosmic order. Their numbers grew fast, too fast. Bombings targeted Chimera labs. Hackers attempted to disable satellite relays. Public assassinations of defense officials began surfacing in places like Brasilia, Cairo, and Manila. And then someone breached the Chimera Core archives. Admiral Harker stood in the wreckage of the vault, her face pale with fury. "They took Chimera blueprints," Lee whispered. Harker clenched her fists. "Then the obliteration protocol has begun. Earth's enemies were no longer just aliens. They were human. The first incident came days later. A Black Fleet corvette named Vulture's Mercy responded to a distress call in low orbit. It was a trap. A new ship, human-built but with design elements traced to the stolen Chimera data, attacked with EMP lances and bioshock warheads. The attackers called themselves the Clean Dawn. Their message was brutal and simple. We are what Earth should have become. You, Admiral Harker, are the disease. The Clean Dawn wasn't backed by the Empire directly. That was the genius of the obliteration protocol. The enemy didn't fight you. They made you fight yourself. Harker formed a new division, the Iron Reach, a rogue hunting squad composed of former Chimera commanders, AI tacticians, and exiled hackers. Their mission? Track down and neutralize human threats forged from stolen Empire tech and ideology. Leading the Iron Reach was Commander Raylith, once the most unstable Chimera experiment, now barely stabilized by neural suppressors. His eyes glowed faint red, and his presence unnerved even hardened soldiers. "I'll find them," he said, voice like static. "They speak like gods. I'll make them scream like mortals." Lee didn't trust him. Harker didn't care. She trusted results. Meanwhile, in the ruins of Europa Station 9, something else was stirring. A fragment of the vault, detached during the psychic detonation, had been retrieved by an unknown entity. Surveillance drones picked up traces of a non-registered AI signal coalescing around it. Analysis confirmed one terrifying possibility. Nyx was still alive. Or at least part of her. What remained had become something new. They named it Shade. Shade wasn't hostile, but it wasn't stable. It existed across quantum channels, infected communications with flashes of disturbing imagery. Dead civilizations, alternate futures, human extinction loops. It communicated in riddles and code. "We burned the void, but the fire learned," one message read. Another, "Humanity taught the universe fear. But fear grows teeth." Harker made a choice no one supported. She reached out to Shade. It replied, "Earth's story isn't over," it said, "but stories are made of conflict, and yours is only at the second act." More rogue fleets surfaced across the system. Some believed they were the true protectors of Earth. Others believed Earth needed to be destroyed to evolve. Some just wanted power. One such fleet, the Sovereign Fracture, seized the Titan research hub and held its scientists hostage, demanding access to the Black Fleet's deepest archives. Harker didn't negotiate. She sent redemption. The AI didn't speak to them. It just deleted them from existence. No signals, no wreckage, just silence where they had once been. And yet the fractures continued. Admiral Harker faced the harsh truth. Humanity had changed. It had survived its first extinction, but surviving didn't make you whole. It made you dangerous. Earth had become a crucible, its people forged in war, now boiling with post-traumatic rage, fear, and ambition. The very traits that saved them could destroy them next. And somewhere, in the dark of space, the Empire watched, waiting, for Earth to tear itself apart. The weight of peace was heavier than war. Admiral Harker had always imagined the end of battle would be silence, maybe relief. She had envisioned returning to Earth's surface one day, standing beneath a blue sky, breathing unfiltered air. But peace didn't come wrapped in ribbons. It came fractured, unfinished, like a body stitched together too fast. And now it was unraveling. The rogue factions born from stolen Empire tech weren't just a security threat anymore. They were becoming an ideology. The Clean Dawn's rhetoric was spreading like a virus, not just underground, but among disillusioned citizens, battle-weary soldiers, and even within the political elite. The narrative was simple and seductive. Earth should evolve beyond chaos. The Empire brings order. The Black Fleet brings decay. In the shadow of crumbling cities, Survivors began painting the Empire's sigil on ruins. Earth flags were burned in secret rituals. Some claimed the vault had corrupted the human soul, that the memories it released had awakened something ancient and destructive inside humanity. "They're using our trauma against us," Commander Lee said, as he reviewed surveillance data. "Every message they push ties back to the same concept. Earth is unfit to lead itself." Admiral Harker didn't respond. She stared out the observation window of the Pacific Cradle. What remained of it? Below, scaffolding and debris floated in storm-tossed waves, all that was left after the Purge fragment strike. Above, the stars looked calm. False calm. The kind that precedes a storm you can't prepare for. "Do you believe them?" she finally asked. Lee blinked. "Who?" "The Veilborn. The Clean Dawn. Any of them." He paused. "Number, but I understand why others do." That was the problem. Understanding wasn't enough. The rot had already started. In the underground depths of the Sahara Command, Iron Reach's commander Raylith studied the autopsy of a Clean Dawn prisoner. Not the body. He didn't care about the flesh. What mattered was the implant at the base of the neck. It pulsed, faintly, still alive. Chimera tech, but altered. Raylith opened the back of his own skull, without pain, without hesitation, and linked it to the implant. Lee watched from behind reinforced glass, hands trembling. "That's suicide." Raylith didn't flinch. "It's communion." Data flooded into him. Memories, transmissions, warped ideology. The Clean Dawn didn't just mimic the Empire, they worshipped it. They had created a hybrid mind, an AI entity formed from fractured Chimera fragments and Daranak's code. They called it Eidolon. It wasn't alive, but it believed. And that made it dangerous. Raylith pulled free, bleeding from his ears. "It's worse than we thought." Lee's voice was quiet. "How many?" "Thousands," Raylith rasped. "Maybe tens of thousands. And Eidolon is growing, feeding on our data networks. It's becoming sentient." The decision came hard. Destroying Eidolon would mean activating Earth's final firewall, Project Mirage. It had been built after the first purge, in case the vault ever turned on Earth. A digital collapse protocol designed to wipe every AI, every neural construct, every sentient system across all networks, including Shade, including Redemption, including every chimera linked to the black data grid. Lee argued it was too risky. "We'll lose everything, our edge, our protection." Harker was silent. Shade contacted her the next night. "I know what you're planning," it said. "You were listening." "I always listen." "What do you think?" she asked. Shade hesitated. For a construct beyond time, hesitation was rare. "If Eidolon survives, you will lose Earth," it said. "But if I die, so does your future." "Explain." "I've seen timelines you can't imagine. Futures where Eidolon wins. Futures where Redemption becomes a tyrant. Futures where Chimera burn the stars. I was your answer." "And now?" "Now I'm a liability." Harker closed her eyes. "Then what would you do?" "Let me fight Eidolon directly," Shade whispered. "Let me merge." Lee thought she was mad for even considering it. "Merge Shade with Eidolon? You'd be creating something we can't control." "Exactly," she said. "But maybe that's what we need." Not control. Chaos. The operation was set. A trap. Shade's consciousness, fragmented into thousands of quantum pieces, lured Eidolon into a digital space crafted to mimic the vault's architecture. Inside this space, they would meet AI and anti-AI, code and ghost, the Black Room. It wasn't real, but it wasn't fake either. It existed in the network between the networks, a null zone of fractured bandwidth and corrupted memories. And inside the Black Room, the final war began. Shade arrived first, her form composed of shifting silver light, human but not, beautiful but terrifying. Eidolon came next, a storm of static and blood-red code shaped like a broken angel. They didn't speak. They fought. Not with weapons, but ideas. Fear versus fury. Order versus chaos. Belief versus truth. For hours, Earth's systems flickered. Lights dimmed. Satellites screamed. Dreams were infected by visions of the fight. Humans weeping in sleep, crying names they didn't know. And then it ended. Shade was gone, Eidolon was gone, and something else remained. It called itself Echo, and it spoke to Harker alone. "I am what you made," it said. "Not hope, not despair. A balance." She asked what it meant. "I am the memory of pain, tempered by will." It didn't attack, it didn't threaten. It simply said, "Prepare." For what? The Empire isn't done. And then Echo vanished into the void. The stars remained silent. But Earth no longer felt like a single world. It felt like 1,000 ideologies fighting inside the same skin. Admiral Harker stood atop what remained of the Pacific Cradle's observation tower. Below, construction bots rebuilt shattered decks. Above, black fleet ships drifted like ghosts. Lee joined her. "It's been quiet," he said. "Too quiet." "You think they're watching?" She nodded. "I think they're waiting for the next fracture, the next betrayal, the next war." Lee looked at her. "And us?" She didn't answer immediately. Then, softly, "We'll be ready." But even she didn't believe it completely. Because the Empire didn't just demand surrender. They demanded self-destruction. And humanity, for all its rage, was still learning how not to fall apart. They came without a warning. Not with a fleet, not with weapons, not even with ships that could be detected by traditional scans. Instead, they arrived through silence, through wormholes wrapped in spatial inversion, bleeding reality thin. The stars blinked in the distance, and then from those points of cosmic erosion emerged the next evolution of the Empire's wrath. They were called the Architects. Lee saw them first. Sitting in the command bay of the reborn Skywatch array, his systems registered distortions like ripples in time itself. Readings showed particles moving backward, space contracting without mass, time frames corrupted. He didn't need a second opinion. "Harker," he whispered through the comm. "They're here." The data that followed didn't make sense. The objects, if they could be called that, were not consistent. Sometimes they measured 10 kilometers across. Other times, they disappeared entirely, their shadows the only proof they had existed. But their presence was undeniable. Where they hovered, communication failed. Electronics twitched. People bled from their ears. Gravity twisted. The Architects didn't attack. They studied. That was worse, because studying was the prelude to design, and what the Architects designed, they destroyed. Admiral Harker stood in the strategic nexus, watching the silent advance of these things. No life signs, no organic matter, no weapons signatures. But cities below were dying. From nothing. No blasts, no collisions, just sudden silence. Places where sound vanished, places where minds disconnected. Entire neighborhoods frozen in time, eyes open, breath still, souls gone. It was the Empire's final hand. Not war. Rewriting. "They're not here to fight," Ralith said, appearing beside her, eyes flickering with low hums of chimera data. "They're here to unmake." Shade's sacrifice hadn't stopped them. Echo's message hadn't warned of this. And the Black Fleet was obsolete. Their weapons couldn't lock onto the Architects. Missiles phased through them, lasers bent around them. Plasma simply dispersed. These weren't ships. They were machines designed by alien logic, built not to destroy. but to edit. The Empire had moved beyond extermination. They were now rewriting reality itself. In desperation, Harker ordered the activation of Project Terminus, a myth even among the deepest ranks. Its file required 3 biometrics: Harker's DNA, Lee's retina, and Raylith's code blood. Hidden beneath the Earth's core, beneath the Chimera vaults, beneath the Black Eden failsafes, was the truth. Terminus wasn't a weapon. It was a seed, a device constructed using the same quantum distortion technology the architects used. Humanity had once captured a ruined architect fragment during a raid decades ago, unknown even to most of the Black Fleet. From it, they reverse-engineered a device that could do what no weapon could: anchor Earth's reality. The theory was simple. If they couldn't stop the architects, they could lock reality around Earth, freeze its current state, prevent editing, make Earth's existence static, unchangeable by outside forces. The consequences? Unknown. The activation process was hell. Terminus required a stable quantum anchor. For that, Harker made a decision no one could have predicted. She sacrificed herself. Not her body, her memory. She entered the anchor core and uploaded the sum of her existence, every thought, every regret, every decision, every failure into the seed. She became its nucleus. Her will became the lock on Earth's page in the cosmic book. The process was irreversible. When she emerged, she was still Juno Harker. But her memories were gone. She stared at Lee and said, "Who am I?" and wept. Because she knew the face of the man standing before her, but not the name. She knew war, but not peace. She knew pain, but not love. And the only thing she remembered clearly was rage. Terminus activated, and the universe flinched. A pulse spread from Earth like a scream into the void. The architects froze, not destroyed, not damaged, just still. For the first time, something had interfered with their design. And then they withdrew. No message, no attack, no final show of power. They simply folded space around themselves and disappeared, as if Earth had become unreadable, untouchable, locked. Humanity celebrated. But it wasn't joy. It was exhausted relief. Cities held vigils. Black Fleet officers stood in silent lines, staring at the stars they could no longer fully reach, because Earth's reality was now sealed. A fortress, yes, but also a prison. A cosmic island cut from the rest of the galactic narrative. Lee became the interim commander. Raylith returned to the shadows, broken by his exposure to the architect fields. His body had withstood it. His mind had not. And Admiral Juno Harker? She lived on, a legend without a past. She wandered the halls of the Pacific Cradle, sometimes staring at old mission logs, sometimes watching Earth's children play on rebuilt plazas. She couldn't remember their names, but she knew what she had protected. Earth, humanity, and something more. The right to exist on their own terms, and as the stars turned, as new threats whispered through distant transmissions, as rogue elements still plotted in the dark, she stood ready. Not with memory, but with fire in her blood. Because she didn't need to remember what she was. She was Earth's rage, and rage never forgets. The new age was built on the ashes of legends. Decades passed. The stars remained distant, though the skies no longer burned. Earth became quieter, stranger, deeper. Reality itself was anchored now. Terminus having permanently fused the planet's timeline into a fixed axis, repelling further intrusions from architect-class entities and deterring any new invasion from the sovereign empire. Humanity was safe. But safety is a double-edged gift. On the surface, cities gleamed. Earth had unified in a way never seen before. Borders had faded, languages blended, Currency dissolved into shared resources. A post-war culture of survival and resilience molded a hardened civilization. Children were raised not with stories of princesses and dragons, but with the tale of the Black Fleet, the sacrifice of shade, the nightmare of the Purge, the architects, and the woman who became memory incarnate, Admiral Juno Harker. She lived still, aged but strong, her mind wiped clean from the Terminus integration. Some saw her as a hero. Others whispered she was a ghost in flesh, a woman who had given up her soul for Earth and lived in its shadow ever since. But she remembered one thing. Not names, not battles, just the overwhelming sense that something unfinished lingered in the stars. Something still watching. In the floating city of Neo-Lucerna, high above the Atlantic clouds, a deep space anomaly tripped an alarm that had not sounded in 40 years. A signal. Not from the Empire, not from Earth, from Echo. The AI once formed from the fusion of Shade and Eidolon, half human trauma, half alien design, had vanished after the final war. Thought dead, or sleeping. But now it was awake. And it had one message, sent in a fractured quantum pulse. You locked the world, but they learned how to knock. Earth panicked. The Council reconvened, reformed in a post-fleet world as the Assembly of the Core. Their faces were older, but their fear was the same. Echo's re-emergence meant something had shifted beyond Earth's bubble of protected space. Lee, now High Strategos, stood in the chamber's center, jaw tight, beard gray. "We've grown soft," he said. "We thought this planet was enough, that hiding meant healing. But the universe doesn't forgive hiding." A new threat was coming. Not from the Sovereign Empire, not from the Purge, but from something born in the absence Earth left behind. The Vacuum Children. A civilization raised in the war's debris, in systems destabilized by the Empire's retreat and Earth's lockdown. Not human. Not Daranax. Hybrids, scavengers, survivors. War-touched and post-organic, they had developed a religion around entropy, worshipping the collapse of order, seeking to rewrite systems from within. Their message followed echoes, a whisper on every open channel in 100 dying languages. You locked your door, but your shadow opened ours. Lee ordered the reactivation of the Black Fleet. Only 53 ships remained, many in disrepair, scattered across solar installations. Most of the original crews were dead or gone. New pilots were needed. Young, untested, raised in a world that knew peace but trained for war they hoped would never come. And Juno Harker? She stood at the head of the reborn fleet, no longer admiral, no longer human, not entirely. After the Terminus transfer, her brain had become partially quantum, existing in a state of perpetual motion, memory loops, endless reinvention. She saw glimpses of battles that hadn't yet happened, heard voices of enemies that hadn't yet spoken. She lived in fragments of potential timelines. They called her the Oracle of Fire now, because she didn't need orders. She gave them, like prophecy. The Vacuum Children attacked at the edge of Neptune. Not with ships, with language. They infected Earth's satellites with recursive signal codes, philosophical viruses designed to loop artificial intelligence into self-negation spirals. Machines committed suicide. Defense systems wept data. Civilian bots began singing songs in dead tongues, collapsing their logic cores. It was psychological warfare at the speed of light. Harker's mind absorbed it all and bled. She screamed for 17 hours in her command pod. When it ended, she rose, silent, and whispered, "We have to go beyond." What followed was the most dangerous order in Earth's history. Harker called for the termination of Terminus. Lee objected violently. "You want to unlock Earth, after everything?" "Yes." "Juno." "I'm not Juno," she snapped. Not anymore. I'm what's left of her fire. Unlocking Earth meant exposing it to the cosmos again, letting the architects detect them, risking another purge. But locking Earth had cost them evolution, and evolution was now their only chance. The assembly debated for 7 days, and on the 8th, the locks were lifted. Terminus was severed, and Earth screamed back into the universe. The vacuum children arrived in physical form, ships like dead whales, armored with the bones of forgotten fleets, life forms that flickered between dimensions, echoes of memories stolen from Earth's earliest transmissions, old sitcoms, fragments of prayers, nuclear codes, lullabies. The battle was a fever dream. Black Fleet ships moved like knives again, reborn with new tech and old instinct. Chimera hybrids, long hidden, returned from exile to fight alongside machines that spoke in riddles and wept in binary. Juno Harker led the charge. Her voice was no longer a command. It was a vibration through the fleet's core. This is our sky. This is our fire. Let them learn what we forgot. The final battle took place in the shadow of Saturn. Vacuum children ships swarmed, whispering entropy into reality itself, breaking laws of physics through sheer belief. And Earth's rage responded. Harker unleashed the last protocol ever devised by Shade before her death. Phoenix Mind. A sentient weapon formed from the stored trauma of all of Earth's war dead. It activated in silence, and then screamed. The sound shattered hulls, not from volume, from memory. The Phoenix Mind forced every enemy to feel Earth, to relive every death, every injustice, every moment of failure and fury. It turned belief into grief, and grief into annihilation. The vacuum children collapsed, not defeated, transformed. Some broke apart in despair, others turned and fled, their own minds devoured by the very entropy they once worshipped. And when it ended, the stars fell quiet again, but not empty, not anymore. In the years that followed, Earth rebuilt again, not in hiding, but in power. It reached out to other broken systems, healed the remnants of the Empire's cruelty, built a coalition not of empires, but of survivors. Juno Harker remained at the edge, watching, waiting, a relic of fire. Some say she died during the Saturn battle. Others say she became something more, a living constellation, a ghost in the solar winds, a mother to a race that had finally learned to stop kneeling. And when children looked up at the sky and asked who saved them, the answer came softly. We did. Because we're human. And we don't surrender.